We have a little more than 1 month before National Novel Writing Month starts, and this is a really exciting time period for many authors across the world because they come together and they try to write 50,000 words in this month, often on a single project, but not always. Some people start new stories, some people work on old ones, but the goal is always the same, to reach a minimum of 50,000 words within that 1 month period. And yes, it is right at the start of the holiday season for Americans, in particular since we celebrate our Thanksgiving in November. And one of my friends, her theory is that the man who came up with this idea for National Novel Writing Month taking place during Thanksgiving was trying to get out of helping with all of the extra chores that usually come up during this time. Anyway, I really love this time, and I like it because a lot of authors decide they're going to try and push what their limits are. So I thought one of the things that I wanted to do to help was to put together some videos talking about how people can come up with how you can do the best that you can for this and prepare for it. So today and the next few videos I'll be discussing how can you get your ideas in order. And you can do this for a manuscript that you already have, or you can use this as a basis for a completely new story. Personally, I really like starting new stories. There's nothing like that adrenaline rush of finding a whole new world and uncovering it and seeing if you can finish it within the course of the month. So, for today, I want to focus on taking literal sayings, or even figurative sayings then, and flipping them to the opposite of whatever they might be. Now for this, I have a fun example for you. There is currently a guest post on my blog featuring The Armor of Aletheia by Raylene Burke, and she's writing about how she came up with the idea. And it's just really interesting. I love hearing about how authors come up with their stories and what contributes to this core idea and then the world and then the characters, because when you really think about it, we're creating galaxies, universes, generations, and histories, and it starts in here. And of course, there are so many factors of what comes into that, but in this case she took the idea of what if the armor of God was literal. Now, the armor of God, if you're not familiar with that, is featured in the Bible in the book of Ephesians, and it is discussed by the Apostle Paul as something that you put on as a Christian as you are dealing with various spiritual battles and challenges throughout the day. And there are various components to it. So in this case, it is a figurative example. It is not literal, but she took it and she decided to see what would happen if she made it literal. And I think this is a fantastic idea when you're trying to create a story, when you're trying to make a world or a character or anything like that, looking at idioms, sayings, beliefs, and flipping them to either the opposite of the purpose or to the opposite of how it's intended can create some really fascinating results. So for instance, taking the armor of God and making that literal is really great for offering up some interesting conflict situations. This is a fantasy story and I'm looking forward to reading it myself. Another example of taking a phrase would be Agatha Christie with her "And Then There Were None." That is based off of a children's poem which you're probably quite familiar with, and it's just counting down until there's no one left. Now, the interesting thing with this is that she actually created a whole trope and a series of what became cliches, which is just fascinating. You never know what's going to happen with your stories when you do this. So you can take short sayings and then flip them around. Like, for instance, let's say, the saying, it costs an arm and a leg. We mean that figuratively. Well, what if it was literal? And then, even though it's not as interesting to take the literal and make it figurative unless it's really extreme, because it's the extremities that actually give us some fascinating components, particularly if you write in speculative fiction. Horror, science fiction, and fantasy really thrive on these conflict-based ideas. But let's say here, one of the sayings is that red sky at night is sailor's delight, red sky at morning, sailors take warning. Now here, it is meant literally. Well, what if there was a world in which that was actually figurative? The sky never turns red. It's just an expression. Maybe something happened and now there's no coloration in the sky. Can you imagine how depressing that would be? No sky color, no sunsets, no sunrises. The clouds are always the same dingy gray because you bet they have to be depressing looking. Or maybe they are white, I don't know. It just, you'd have to think about what would happen in this story. So you can basically just take it and find some way to twist it around so it's not exactly what it meant. Or, you can use it as a jumping point. There's so many things that you can do with this. And if you need some ideas, you can go to places such as Phrase Finder, Idioms, the free dictionary, phrases.com, Wise Old Sayings, and Christian Quotes. Now, all of these are databases. I couldn't find any for other religions at this point, so if you know of one, feel free to add that in the comments, and I'll be happy to put that into the description because I'm going to include links down there. But the reason I chose databases is just because they have this really handy tool of providing a saying or an idea for the day, something that just as soon as you pull up the website, you can see something, which is so great for getting some ideas down on paper. Now, you can take these and you can make them say the core of the world, like what I was talking about with the clouds and the coloration of the sky. You can take it and make it specific to their character. So for instance, let's take that idea of the arm and a leg. So that might be a story in which you have a merchant who that is his price, or someone who's being forced to pay that. Of course, that's, and you maybe if you want to bring in some other connections, you have The Merchant of Venice by Shakespeare, which has the literal pound of flesh that he wants exacted. Gotta be careful what deals you make. And then, as with Agatha Christie, it was a matter of just using it as a framework and part of a mystery device. So play around with these, pull some out. You are welcome to even make up your own if you'd like to. And I've done that myself. You just start playing with the words, and sometimes you come up with things that are nonsensical, and then you have to find a way to make it make sense. Because at the end of the day, you do have to put it together in such a way that eventually your readers can follow what you're doing. So that is one way that you can get some ideas for what story you might do, or maybe something that's going to feature in it. I hope that helps, and if you have any sayings or phrases that you think are particularly thought-inducing, or maybe that you think would be quite haunting for a good scary story during the month of October, feel free to share those in the comments. I hope you have a wonderful day, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye.